Hello and welcome to Cuyahoga Arts and Culture's 2025 Project Support Panel. I'm Julia Carey. I'm here with my fellow CAC staff. Maya is our co-chair, as well as Laura, Davon, and Jake. For audiences joining us online, you can find the captioning by clicking the Show Captions button at the bottom of your page. Thank you to our panelists for serving on our live public panel, learning about our process, our applicants, and our funding criteria, and thank you to our listeners for joining us. Cuyahoga Arts and Culture is the local public funder for arts and culture in Cuyahoga County. Our mission is to inspire and strengthen the community by investing in arts and culture. The goal of our project support grant making is to promote public access and encourage the breadth of arts and cultural programming in our community by supporting Cuyahoga County-based projects. Can we go to the next slide, please? Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that the land we stand on and the place that we call Cuyahoga County is land that was claimed by the United States government through force, displacement, and treaties negotiated in bad faith. We acknowledge those of the Shawnee, Miami, Erie, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Haudenosaunee Confederacy whose lands we stand on, and the thousands of Native Americans representing over 100 tribes who currently live in Northeast Ohio today. And we thank the Lake Erie Native American Council for helping us to develop this land acknowledgement. We also want to take a moment to lift up CAC's value of equity. We choose to lead with racial equity in our work because the creation and perpetuation of racial inequalities is embedded into government and grant making. We confront the white supremacy that resides in our work because racial inequities across all indicators of success are deep and pervasive. We also recognize the power and potential that organizations who produce arts and cultural programming have as bearers of culture. These institutions have the power to write the narrative about who belongs and who is valued, and we encourage arts organizations to connect with resources to advance equity in your own work. You can visit cacgrants.org/equity to learn more. And it is important to note that CAC does not make grants or funding decisions on the basis of race, color, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, national origin, religion, disability, or any characteristic protected by law. And with that, I would like to introduce our Director of Grant Making Strategy and Communication, Jake Sinatra, who has some words for our panelists and applicants.
Thank you, Julia. On behalf of the CAC team and our Executive Director, Jill Paulson, I just want to take a moment to welcome our panelists who are joining us virtually today from across the nation. Welcome also to our applicants and the listening public who are joining us today. On the live stream, we thank you for tuning in throughout our live panels today, tomorrow, and Wednesday at 1 p.m. each day. Panel is what I like to call a hallmark of CAC's grant-making process because this is the distinct moment in our process each year where we can most visibly see our values of trust, equity, and stewardship put into action. And so it's important to celebrate this moment and to note that our panelists are all here as experts in their respective work. They come from a wide variety of communities, backgrounds, and experiences, and all have been trained to review applications using the same funding criteria as were provided to our applicants in our grant guidelines this year. So this ensures that today we are all using the same language and framework with our focus on public benefit as we move through the discussion today. And you can learn more about our panelists on our website at cacgrants.org/panel. So briefly here to our panelists, thank you, thank you, thank you. We could not do this important work without you. We appreciate your attention as you reviewed and spent time and got to know our nonprofits from across Cuyahoga County. Thank you in advance for being part of our work. To our grantees, our applicants, we thank you for your energy and participation in our process, which began many months ago. We know that this panel will be beneficial to you, and we look forward to working with you this year, no matter the outcome of the panel today. And lastly, to my team, I'm grateful to each of you, and I thank you for all the work that you've done to make sure that this panel is positive and productive for everyone involved. So again, welcome, and I'll turn it back to Julia to get us started.
Great. So now I will walk through how the review process will work for those following along with the live stream. First, I'll introduce each applicant, organization, and project. Then we'll lead the panel through a discussion focusing on each of our funding criteria one at a time. Panelists will then be invited to comment on applications in relation to public benefit for about 3 minutes, artistic and cultural vibrancy, and organizational capacity for about 2 minutes each. Our panel co-chair Maya will keep us on track with time by following along with the PowerPoint on the screen. We've allocated up to 8 minutes for each application. So to keep things moving smoothly, panelists should plan to come off mute to indicate that they would like to speak next. It's okay to do that while another panelist is finishing up. I might also call on panelists to speak if need be. So after we go through the criteria, the panelists will submit their scores, which are then tabulated offline by CAC staff. Panel results will be shared with applicants ahead of our November board meeting. So how can you engage as an applicant? To our applicants, please do not contact or address the panel in any manner during the deliberations, electronically or otherwise. If an applicant believes that a panelist has presented incorrect information regarding their application, they should complete the information correction form, which is available at cacgrants.org, and it's also in the audience guide. CAC staff will review the correction forms to determine if it's an objective correction or of misinformation. And if it is, the panel chair will read it to the panel and for the public. So an example of this would be if a panelist misstates the number of performances detailed in an application. This would be an opportunity to clarify what was submitted with the application and not to provide additional details. After the panel is complete, audience members are encouraged to participate in the public comment session by submitting comments via our online form at cacgrants.org/panel. The deadline to submit comments is at the conclusion of the panel deliberations at the end of the day today. Let's see, what I also want to do is ask now our panelists to introduce themselves. So what I'm going to do is I just dropped the order here in the chat. So panelists, if you can, please share your name and gender pronouns, where you're located, and your professional connection to arts and culture.
I guess I'll go first. Hi, I'm Beth Prebor, she, her. I'm the executive director of Hands-On Sign Interpreted Performances in New York City. I'm also a person with a disability.
Good afternoon. I'm Christopher Schramm, he, him, of Kalamazoo, Michigan. I've got almost 30 years of nonprofit leadership and development across Miami, Florida, Chicago, and now Kalamazoo with multidisciplinary organizations, art museums, theaters, and most recently, currently, the Kalamazoo Symphony Orchestra.
Hi, everyone. Deontay Griffin Quick, he, him, his. Calling in from Avenel, New Jersey, land of the Lene Lenape. I am an actor, arts administrator, consultant in the field, and I currently sit on the board of the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies.
Hello, everyone. I'm Roshi Ahmadian. I sit in Chicago on JP Morgan Chase's Central Region Global Philanthropy team. And many moons ago, I worked at Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, best years of my life. So excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Tamara Williamson. Oh, can everybody hear me? Hang
Yes,
on.
we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. My pronouns are she, her. I've been working in nonprofits for 14 years. I work at the Children's Museum of Memphis. And I've been a grant writer for 7 years, currently a grant writer at the Children's Museum of Memphis now. And my boss was on the Cuyahoga Arts Council grant panel last year and recommended it to me this year.
Thank you. Thank you all so much again for joining us. I'm always so impressed by the breadth of skills that our panelists bring. So really appreciate your time and attention here. So we are going to go ahead and get started. The first application that we're going to look at is Berea Arts Fest for their project titled 2025 Berea Arts Fest. Berea Arts Fest is an annual community event which takes place the second Sunday of each September. It's free and open to the public. The Berea Arts Fest looks forward to presenting a full schedule of musical and performing artists at multiple venues, regional artworks for sale, and a kids creation station, a student art show, and many visual delights. So once people have that pulled up in the system, if someone would like to get us started on how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project.
All right, I will get us started. I found the information in this section of the narrative to be fair. I thought the organization did a good job of describing the city of Berea demographically, along with the greater Cleveland, Cuyahoga County area. I was interested in getting a deeper description of both the artists and the performers who are either juried into the festival or hired for the festival. The organization mentions a commitment to increase the diversity percentage of its board, and I was also interested in learning about the details of the how they want to accomplish that, and what are the expectations and strategies around diversifying attendees, artists, and performers.
Thank you, Chris. Deontay, were you ready to go next?
I was. I actually scored this section strong. I believe they presented a lot of great data about the community that they were intending to connect with through the program, and also just some really, in my opinion, clearly defined goals and objectives and ways in which they would like to move forward to ensure that they're increasing the public benefit of their program as well.
Do we just kind of drop in?
Yes, go ahead, Beth. Thank
Hi,
you.
this is Beth. I actually also scored it strong. I also applauded their kind of work in accessibility, and one of my comments was actually that I think they could broaden their view of disability in terms of inviting additional communities with other disabilities into, rather than just developmental disabilities. If they were doing all that work, that would be even increasing their public benefit.
I also scored them strong in this category. I found the example of using the all access train to be a very creative way of gathering feedback on, using the art itself as a way to gather feedback and advice on potential accessibility features.
So I scored them fair. Like Chris, I did wonder how, I mean, they had goals about increasing diversity on the board, but I also wanted to know how they were going to accomplish that. But I really like that they did say that they wanted to focus on activities for people with developmental disabilities. I think that's a group people sometimes forget about when they're talking about diversity. And I really like that they pointed out that people, they accommodated people with mobility issues last year, and want to continue that with focusing on people with disabilities.
Thank you, Tamara. Next, we will move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I'll start us off because it's the same application and I won't go first on a subsequent one.
Okay.
I found the information here to be fair, and this is where I was influenced by their work with the disability community. I love the incorporation of feedback from the CCBDD to increase access for attendees with disabilities, and I think that shows how they incorporate advice and surveying and feedback to adapt its programming for different communities that are part of a collective whole of a community. And I also liked that they are focusing any CAC grant funding specifically around performer compensation.
I scored them strong in this category. Sorry, Beth.
Okay.
I thought that they were strong, but that they could improve on this category if they continue to use creative ideas for gathering additional feedback like they had with the all access train. I know it's kind of hard with events like this where it's one day and folks are coming in and kind of hard to capture or survey all the attendees. But I think that there could be more done to make it a formal feedback process.
And this is Beth, just kind of following up. I agree. I actually scored them strong. I thought their inclusion from participants and their inclusion of feedback was a strong and positive point of the grant.
I also scored them strong in this area. And I think particularly I had a particular interest and applauded them for they talked in the application about relocating back to the center of the town of Berea, which obviously then resulted in some increased exposure for downtown local businesses as well. So I think other programming and ways in which they can kind of drive economic vitality into communities is really important. So I appreciated their consideration of the impact on the rest of the community through this program as well.
Thank you. We will move on to organizational capacity. Tamara, I saw that you were about ready to speak. If you're ready to comment on organizational capacity, please go ahead.
Oh, sure. It seems like the team is really like they know what they're doing, they're experienced, and they've done this before, and they have learned from what they're doing. So I scored them strong.
I found them to be fair in this category, and the couple of questions I had were around the budget. Specifically, I found that the total expenses in the table totaled 66,000, but in the budget it was listed as 67,000. So I was wondering what that gap of 1,000 is about. And it would have been helpful to understand under the other category in their budget, $18,000 was listed there. I was kind of wondering what that's about. And I found the execution plan to not be as clear.
I agree with things that Roshi has just said. I also found this information to be fair. At the top of the application, they list the overall organization budget as a little over 54,500, but the total project expenses for next year are estimated to be 66 or 67,000. So I wanted to learn more about that 23% increase from 24 to 25. And expenses went up 33% from fiscal year 22 to 23. And I was looking for more narrative in the either data arts report that would just share some light on that. You know, we all sort of know that everybody's expenses are going up in every category. And what are the revenue plans then to match that going forward?
Thank you. Any final comments around Berea Arts Fest? Okay. Yeah, Chris.
If they're on, you would have just had this year's festival within the last 2 weekends. I hope you had great weather and great attendance and everything went smoothly. And you were so organized that if you had a fire to stomp out, you were able to focus your time on stomping out the fire.
Thanks, Chris. All right, we will leave that one there. And next we are going to turn to BorderLight in just a moment. So I'll let our panelists flip over to the next one here briefly.
Julia, can I just ask, so we don't have to do anything if we've done it, right?
Correct. Yep. If you've got your scores in there and you aren't making any adjustments to them, you are all good to go. Great. So our next application here is from BorderLight for their project titled BorderLight Fringe 2025. BorderLight is looking to secure funding for its 2025 Fringe Festival in Playhouse Square. Would someone like to get us started on how this application relates to public benefit? Again, an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project.
I'm happy to kick us off here. I scored them strong in this category. I thought that they clearly articulated that they're making an effort to meet artists and community members in public places around the city and in various neighborhoods and suburbs. And I specifically really love that they had data to show that the majority of attendees were coming from outside of downtown to attend the festival.
This is Beth. I also scored them strong. Again, I really like their community engagement and outreach. And I liked the idea of their clinics. And I thought it was an interesting way of providing the outreach to the individual communities.
I also scored them strong in this category, and something that really stuck out for me was their attachment of their brochure, which has a key of different performances by category and thematic elements, and it really showed the breadth of the programming and how it covers many, many different areas of interest, and groups would fall into a number of different categories. That was a really smart attachment for this grant.
So I'll go. I scored them fair. I really did like what they said, you know, their application about the artists and everything, but I was a little unclear about their comments about diversity. I wasn't sure like what kind of diversity they were talking about and just how they were appealing to the whole city.
I'll just note that I scored them strong in this area as well, and much to observations of Chris and Beth. No need to reiterate.
We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I'll say I scored them fair in this category. I will say I did appreciate how they really do center the opinions and experience of artists to inform their planning and curation. And I also noted that they have a particular focus for supporting some local artists and emerging artists as well. But it just still lacked a little bit of specificity in terms of the type of programming that will be provided. And I think that is difficult and challenging sometimes when you have festivals, because there's a lot of different activity. So I'm just noting that as a understanding for myself as reading it, that sometimes is a challenge, but it would have been helpful if there was a little bit more evidence and specificity in this section to give it a strong score.
And I did give them a strong score here. I specifically like that they try to reserve at least 50% of their spots for local artists. At least that's a goal moving forward. They were at the 40 to 45% mark, I believe, in the narrative for their most recent festival. And they, provide financial support. They rent the venues. They waive fees when necessary. They have the box office revenue sharing agreement. They have goals to increase the ways in which they support the artists that participate.
And I'm just going to make a note only because when I see ASL interpreted and relaxed performances, it kind of like hits me just because that's my area that I work. I score them strong, but I will kind of make a note to them when the festival goes ahead to make sure they reach out to the deaf and disability communities to let them know that these services are going on. So I acknowledge and applaud that they're doing it, but make sure that not just doing it for nobody.
All right, we will move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I found them to be fair in this category. I had some questions around the budget. I found some discrepancies. For example, I believe the amount requested was higher than the max allowable. And then the totals for the budget came out to $275,000, but the total project expenses were listed at $250,000. So I was just kind of wondering about all of those numbers. I did appreciate that they had narrative explanations in the data arts data. That was helpful.
I'll just echo that I scored them fair in this area for the same reasons as Roshi as well.
Yeah, and this is Beth. I ditto to the same thing. I scored them fair.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on everyone else's comment. I scored them fair too because there were some discrepancies with the numbers and the budget. I thought maybe like it might have been a typo or something.
And I scored them strong. I did notice those same things, but I ended up putting them in a strong category. I don't really have anything else to share, though.
All good. Thank you. That concludes our review for BorderLight. Panelists, you can move on to the next one, which will be the Carolyn L. Farrell Foundation. I'll give you a moment to flip over there. So our next application here is from the Carolyn L. Farrell Foundation for their project titled Celebrate Joyful Moments. The Farrell Foundation is looking to fund their arts enrichment program throughout Greater Cleveland. The target audience includes individuals who are diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, along with their primary care partners, and those that do not currently have access to their community programs. Would someone like to get us started around how this application connects to public benefit, an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I'll start. I rated them strong because I think this was a great cause and a great way to recognize a group of people that sometimes are forgotten, not just people with Alzheimer's and dementia, but also their caregivers. I thought that was really really a wonderful project. I did, however, wonder, they said something about diverse musicians and storytellers, but I wanted them to say what made them diverse. But overall, I really liked this.
I'll go next. I also scored them strong, but I did have a question about how they do the outreach to the people in the community, since they are saying that people are living at home, that I was just curious as to how they do that outreach and how they find those people. But I did score them strong.
I totally agree with Beth. I scored them strong, but I had the exact same question, which could have helped increase the score that I gave them. I also had a couple other questions too about how they're, who the professional artists are that they partner with to deliver the programming. What are those people's credentials and training? Who are the volunteers? How are they trained? How often and when do programs take place? Just a lot of details that would have helped me score them higher in the strong category.
And I scored them fair in this category for many of the things that have been already stated, specifically Roshi's comments. I was also interested in learning more specifics about where the programs occur. And that's all I've got.
I'll just say that I scored them strong in this category, particularly when asked about how they'll connect with the community. I think they really did a great job of detailing different groups that they would be connecting with, particularly I think those maybe volunteering and supporting to create the programming as well, not just the recipients of that. So I think for that reason, they were worthy of a strong marking.
Great. We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I had them as, oh, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I marked them as fair in this category. I almost felt that the answer to this question didn't exactly answer the prompt. And I had just was left with a lot of questions. I think there were, they alluded to partnerships with pro artists, but I was unclear about those people's backgrounds, how they're paid. The support materials did help here in answering some, like bringing some of the work to life. And I did appreciate that they're creating Spanish collateral and engaging the Spanish speaking artists for the certain neighborhoods that it's useful for.
I also marked them fair here and noted that they offer programs in different languages and were able to talk a little bit about the impact the programs have on participants and caregivers.
I mean, this is Beth. I rated them strong, but on the low end of strong, because I did appreciate their outreach and their interest in the Hispanic community. I thought that that's generally an underserved community within that community.
I rated them strong because they said something about exposure to the arts for all can eliminate isolation, improve quality of life, and offer creative aging opportunities. And I just really thought that summed up the purpose of this project, which is really meaningful. And I also appreciated their Spanish language programming too.
And I'll just, echo again what I said. I think this application really presented a strong case for the need of supporting both the recipients of the programming and the professionals that they were bringing in to help curate and cultivate that programming as well. So I think having this kind of focus on two tracks is really important for a program like this.
Move on to organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project. Beth, are you ready to address this one? You're off mute right now.
Oh.
I'm happy to jump in here. I think for me, they fell under the fair category. I noticed that CAC is to fund about half of the project costs. So I was a little bit concerned about the potential impacts of them not receiving the full request on the programming. I thought the budget checked out, but I was not quite clear on the timing of the project implementation, and I didn't get a real sense of goals or how their impact is being measured.
I would also put them fair in this category, everything Roshi's already said. Plus, I was interested in learning more about to what degree the paid staff and the volunteer artists are educated, experienced, trained in working with this specific community. What's their expertise?
Oh, go ahead, Tamara.
Oh, I was gonna say I rated them fair as well. I did want to know too more details about the expertise of the people who of the artists.
I'll say that I rated them strong in this category. I think particularly because they had a pretty clear metric and way in which they would measure success for their program. And I think that evaluation process is really important for folks who are developing programs like this.
Yeah, and this is Beth. I graded them strong, but again, on the low end of strong. I thought they had clear evaluations and a strong staff to be able to do the program.
Great. Thank you all. That concludes our review for the Carolyn Farrell Foundation. Next, we will turn to Heights Youth Theater. So I'll give you a moment here to reset. So our next application for Heights Youth Theater is for their project titled Curtains and Cinderella, a classic theater series. Heights Youth Theater's upcoming two-show performance series features Curtains and Cinderella, staged at Wiley Middle School in University Heights, Ohio. This project will offer a comprehensive theatrical experience, including preparation, auditions, and rehearsals, which is aimed at empowering youth and fostering community engagement. Would someone like to get us started on how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I'll jump in to say that I scored them fair in this area simply because my understanding, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe they're a youth-based community theater organization. So I think they really honed in on their focus of community, the way in which they include the parents and families who are also participating and engaging them as volunteers, having that kind of familiar experience, because they talk, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, I believe they talked about consistently being in communication with these folks, whether it be by phone or text message or email. So there was a sense of a smaller community that they were able to tap into versus, you know, a equity producing regional theater company that would have different ways in which they would engage artists and community members.
I mean, I rated them strong in this because I feel like in terms of the community that they're expressing, their community seems to be the students and the audience. So that seemed to me to be clear about who they wanted to be engaged in that program.
So I rated them fair. They seem to do, like, to everybody's point, they seem to define the community clearly, and they seem to be intentional too about the diversity and how they want to increase and maintain it.
I rated them fair in this category. I actually wanted some more details, demographic, geographic details about the youth participants and their host community. And I also wanted to learn more about the outreach that they're doing, perhaps with a DEIB lens to it, to ensure that they are capturing opportunities for, socioeconomic strata and throughout the community beyond the University Heights, Cleveland Heights area of Cleveland.
Any new or differing review information here? Can move on. We'll move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy.
I actually rated them fair on this. I wish that they had been a little bit more specific on how they plan to showcase diversity. Sometimes just kind of saying diversity doesn't make a really clear explanation as to what that means. So I would have liked a little bit more clarity on that.
So I agree with Beth. I rated them fair too, and they said adapting these shows to reflect community diversity ensures inclusivity and representation. And I like that statement, but I wanted to know how they were going to do that. I was wondering if it meant casting a non-white actor in a Cinderella role or something like that. But I like that they do mention intergenerational learning.
For the same reasons Beth and Tamara have shared, I also rated them fair in this category. I'm also interested in situations like this of hearing answers to the questions, why these shows and why these shows now? I'm not casting dispersions on these choices, but take the opportunity to say, here's why we have chosen this.
I'll just jump in to say that I rated them strong, although a low score on strong for the same reasons that were mentioned. But I did appreciate that they do surveys to gather feedback, and they have professionals on staff administering the program. All of these things were good. I just wish they had maybe illustrated with a little bit of an example, maybe from the past, of how this feedback had actually been integrated into their decision making in the programming in the past, or how they foresee it doing so in the future.
Great. We can move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I scored them as fair here, although a high fair score. I was a little bit curious about the 9 years of nomadic programming that they alluded to and the decision to return to the initial home of the organization, but I didn't get a lot more information about that aside from just a brief mention of that. The budget and financials looked good to me, and I noticed that their programming has grown a lot, and so did revenues compared to 2022 and the 2023 data. But it wasn't really explained why. I guess it's the return from the pandemic maybe, or this relocation to a permanent location. So I was just kind of left with some questions on that.
I also rated them fair in this category. I wanted to know more about the demographic makeup of the board and the staff beyond what they shared with us about the artistic team.
Any new or differing thoughts here on organizational capacity?
No, I concur. I rated them the high end of fair. for the same reasons have been noted.
Likewise.
Yeah, same. I really, I kind of like Christopher was saying, I kind of wish they had elaborated more, you know, in the answer about their board and staff.
Great. That concludes our review for Heights Youth Theater. We will turn next to Hospice of the Western Reserve.
I'll jump in. I
Let
found
me introduce the project first. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm just pausing for maybe too much time here. So the next application here for Hospice of the Western Reserve, this is for their project titled 2025 Healing Arts Program, Accessible Art Therapy for Grieving Individuals in Cuyahoga County. The Healing Arts Program offers diverse opportunities for grieving individuals to access art therapy, through which they learn to better understand grief. With the guidance of a board-certified art therapist, participants create artwork that honors their deceased loved ones, supports one another, and learn new ways to cope as they heal from their loss. So please, Chris, get us started around public benefit.
All right. I felt this narrative was strong. I thought they did a strong job of defining their community and showing how they will connect with this community, along with their efforts to encourage participation from diverse populations, especially those who are less likely to use hospice services.
I completely agree with that sentiment. I also had them strong here. But knowing that grief does touch everyone, I was struck by the fact that they said the majority of their participants fall into very specific categories. So I wonder what else they can do to further their reach, and perhaps they could promote their programming and partner with hospitals or clinics, things like that, to spread the word a little bit outside of their current circle.
This is Beth. I agree with everything that Roshi and Chris just said. I also scored them strong, but it seemed like that there was one art therapist involved, so that one way maybe to expand the communities that they want to outreach is kind of expand the therapist that they work with to kind of get into new communities.
I'll just note for myself that I scored them fair in this area, but after also hearing, reviewing once again and then hearing the reflections of my fellow panelists, I might actually move them into the strong category.
So I rated them strong. They stated that the community isn't static or homogenous. Like Roshi was saying, it does seem like they have a type, but they do seem to cast a wide net in advertising for the services.
We can move on to discuss the artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project. Deontay, do you want to get us started?
I can. I scored them fair in this area. I noted that they needed just a little bit more evidence on the artistic element of the programming. I wasn't exactly sure how they would be using art in these therapeutic ways, particularly noting, what artistic mediums are they focusing on, and how and why did they choose those, and how they aid through the therapeutic aspect of the work that they're going to be doing.
And I marked them strong in this category. I like the detail about how the programs are designed, crafted, presented both in person and digitally. And I also thought they did a strong job of showing how the participants themselves influence the future offerings and are included in the planning of those offerings.
So I rated them strong as well. I think it was a very intentional way, like they mentioned, starting with a prompt, the art therapist starting with a prompt, and I just thought it was a really intentional way and respectful and professional way to handle a very sensitive subject. So I appreciated that description.
I rated them strong as well. I like the getting the feedback from their communities. So strong.
I also had them as strong here for the same reasons that were already mentioned, but I do want to call out specifically the use of the support materials here. I think that was really impactful for me. It actually brought tears to my eyes as I was reviewing ours journey through grief. So I thought that was very well done and showcased the impact of their work really well.
Thank you. We'll move on to their organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project. Tamara, do you want to get us started? If you don't have anything to say here, that's okay too.
No, I'll take myself off mute.
Yeah.
I rated them strong. I like the combination of an experienced art therapist and a social worker for a project like this.
I've got them strong here. The program lead is experienced, educated, certified, and they're part of an umbrella, organization that, has even more resources to back up the program's success.
Ditto from me, strong.
Any new or differing ideas here? Okay. Thank you. That concludes our review for Hospice of the Western Reserve. We will turn next to the Jennings Center for Older Adults in just a moment. So our next application here is from the Jennings Center for Older Adults for their project titled Gateway to Culture. This project helps connect Cleveland's rich arts and cultural offerings with older adults in Southeast Cuyahoga County who have difficulty accessing these opportunities. Programs include performances, workshops, interactive distance learning, video conferencing with museums, and intergenerational experiences. Would someone like to get us started on how this application relates to the public benefit criteria, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I can start. I rated them strong. I think this is a really great project for a population that is often forgotten and they seem to really accommodate the needs of older adults. I really liked that.
I agree with Tamara. Sorry. I also rated them high. I also liked it that they worked with seniors from surrounding communities, so connecting not only one place but the communities themselves.
I agree with that. I had them as strong as well. The only thing that would have helped me score them even higher is I wondered about how they're creating a feeling of inclusion for folks who may not identify with this the same religion as the organization is centered around. And so I would have loved to learn more about how specifically they plan to bring together diverse community members as decision makers in the planning process.
I rated it fair in this category, and I wanted more details about the program participants, the demographics beyond the overview of the campus community that they provided in the narrative. The campus community is not 100% of their program participants, so I needed to know who was participating in the program.
Any new or differing thoughts here around public benefit? Beth, you've got your mute off. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I'll hop in to say I scored them on the high end of fair here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, yes, they talked a little bit about their partnership with the United Black Fund to connect with more diverse performers. And I thought that was a great partnership in terms of how to increase diversity of their artists that they're working with. But I did note that I would like to have a little bit more information about the curatorial process, and more evidence about what type of programming would be offered beyond what they've offered as an explanation to question number 7 in the application.
So so following up on what Deontay just said, I rated them on the low end of strong for the same exact reason. So I just wish that they had been a little bit clearer on what the programs were. So in a similar vein.
I rated them fair for those specific comments that have been shared.
I rated them fair as well for the same reason. I wanted more clarity about the kind of programming that they were doing.
Great. We can move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I ranked them as fair in this category. I found that the professional staff had relevant backgrounds. I would have loved to learn more about how they identify and select the partner organizations that they work with a bit more clearly. I also didn't get a very clear picture of the timeline and the steps that go into project implementation. I found their goals to be nice and quantifiable. And it was a nice sign that the organization itself is largely supporting the project budget. But I was curious in reviewing the data arts data, why there was such a drop in the number of independent contractors that they work with from 2022 to 2023. I thought maybe that's perhaps due to decreased number of programs that they had during compared to those during COVID, but there was no narrative to explain that, and that would have been helpful for me.
I scored them strong in this area, particularly because I think they demonstrated how they have a qualified staff, strong staff with experience in the particular area of their focus. And I thought that their use of partnerships to leverage their connectivity with their community was really important as well. And I thought because they had some really clear benchmarks in terms of their evaluation process to measure success is really important, and it'll lead to their success with this programming.
Yeah, I rated them strong as well for the same reason.
I rated them fair for a combination of everything that's been said so far.
Same, I rated them fair as well.
All right. That concludes our time for Jennings Center. We will move next to the Jewish Federation of Cleveland. So our next application for the Jewish Federation of Cleveland is for their project titled Cleveland Israel Arts Connection, Row Green Gallery Exhibitions. The Cleveland Israel Arts Connection is a program of the Jewish Federation's Row Green Gallery, which displays contemporary visual art by established and emerging Israeli artists. By making this art accessible to Clevelanders of all backgrounds and denominations, the gallery exposes the beauty, innovation, passion, and talent of Israeli artists to the community. Would someone like to get us started on how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I rank them as high in this category, but I feel like it could have been higher for me if they answered a couple of questions, including I thought that there was a missed opportunity to better describe how the programming or the exhibit can be inviting to diverse Clevelanders. I was glad to see that they're taking advantage of existing partnerships with organizations like CIA, CMA, Museum. And I particularly enjoyed seeing that they're using Russian language media and Hebrew tours to add accessibility.
I agree with Roshi. I rated them high, but I really, I agree. I wish they would have been a little bit clearer about how they want to engage other diverse communities. They definitely have a clear community in mind that they serve.
I rated them strong, and I don't really have anything new to add.
I rated them strong as well for the same reasons. I do appreciate the outreach efforts with Russian and Hebrew languages.
Any new or differing thoughts here? We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I'm just gonna add that I rated them strong in this category, particularly because I love the idea of being able to offer a artist residency through this program. I think artist residencies are so needed in our field, and particularly in support of individual artists. So for that reason alone, I think it provides these artists that they're working with the necessary resources and opportunities to advance their work and have impact on the community. So definitely worthy of a strong marking.
I ranked them as a very high fair in this category, and particularly because I found that I needed more information about how the community is being engaged in the decision making for what artists or works are being selected, and the programming type or location, all those other details, especially for the harder to reach audiences that may not be already connected to the Jewish Federation due to their religious background or political stance or whatever it may be. So kind of wondering how they're fostering that sense of belonging for a more diverse range of audiences.
I rated them strong in this category. And here's another situation where I think the attachments helped this for me. That brochure of the upcoming season gives you an overview of the three exhibitions. And I think those, that helped show their artistic and cultural vibrancy.
I too rated them strong on this for comments that have already been made.
Great. We can move on to the final criterion, organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I find them to be strong in this category. I particularly enjoyed seeing that the local chapter sees this as a crucial program and is basically funding it, the majority of the expenses related to it. I did wonder about, I think somewhere they mentioned that the Cleveland Jewish Federation is the only one in the country with an Arts Connection program. So I was kind of curious if the larger organization, the umbrella organization, sees this as a success and has any plans of implementing it in other markets, since it seems like such a beneficial and vibrant program.
I also rated them strong. One thing I noted that hasn't been said yet is I find that their leadership is very experienced, and of course, they're umbrella organization with the resources to specifically help support the success of this.
I rated them strong for the same reason. The team seems very experienced and they seem to know what they're doing.
I did too. Strong leadership.
Great. It looks like that wraps up our review for the Jewish Federation. We will next turn to Oh So Powerful in just a moment. Our next organization here is Oh So Powerful for their project titled Sew City Quilts. The Sew City Quilts project is an indoor quilt trail in the Lee Harvard neighborhood of Cleveland. This initiative features quilts designed as public art, promoting sustainable practices through upcycling discarded fibers. This is a multi-generational project that preserves traditional sewing techniques and fosters economic independence. Would someone like to get us started on how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I'll start. So I rated them strong because this seems that they seem to have a really, really strong connection to the community. I really like that this is something that's intergenerational and like just this sounds kind of silly, but like just with your like art, like with your hands, you know, like sewing, and it's just so. I don't know. I really like the way that they connect with the community and that it can kind of bring people in the community together.
I agree. I had them as extremely strong in this category. I just love that they've even designed the entire program through community engagement and participation, and that weaves through, pun intended, the entire process from design to implementation. And so they have such a strong understanding of their community and how to meet them where they're at.
So this is where I need the assistance of my fellow panelists. I was unsure how to rate this. I needed a better understanding of the cultural aspect of the quilt itself, and just clearer about how culture and arts would be embedded in the quilts. So I'm kind of listening now to my panelists for
maybe I'll interject here just from a CAC lens that sewing itself does fall under our definition of arts and culture. So independent of any like historical cultural context, that art form is, you know, a relevant and valid one for an application here. If anyone else wants to speak to that, otherwise, please do.
I can share anecdotally that here in Kalamazoo, when I worked at the art museum, we specifically had a featured exhibition of quilt work from the state of Michigan that covered 4 different galleries. Almost every art form is passed down generation to generation. And this is one that you don't become a professional performer doing this. Yes, you can sell this work if you choose to. And I will speak to this in artistic and cultural vibrancy, but it is definitely a pass down hand to hand. I think this is wonderful that it exists because it is perpetuating this art form. I'll go ahead and say that I rated them strong here since I'm talking. I thought they did a decent job of defining their community and give examples of how they connect. I wanted to know a little bit more about the demographics of the actual participants beyond what they shared about the Lee Harvard community. But I love the fact that they provide all the materials and supplies for free, and there are no participation fees to be a part of this program. To me, that's very strong public benefit.
I'll say that I marked them as fair in the public benefit category, but on the higher end of it, I'll share a very generalized observation and also look to my fellow panelists that can offer some more insight, or CAC staff. I thought what they presented was that this organization had a lot of experience with the art of sewing. And I think that was clear in terms of its impact, in terms of the necessity for this art form as well. But I didn't have as much understanding of evidence to see how they would implement the community organizing aspect of this work. And it sounds like other folks did, so I would love to save space if we can for conversation around that. But I think that made it a little bit harder for me to generally score them on the higher end of things, just because I wasn't sure of how they were actually moving to implementing this through a community organizing lens.
I'll add a comment, kind of building on what Tamara said. This is an art form you do with your hands, not unlike, and I would put this under the broad category of the visual arts. Mm-hmm. Where in theater, in dance, in music, you are individually creating something that is part of a collective. Here, when you are in an art studio or sitting around a table working on quilts, you have the opportunity to have conversation while you are making your art. And I think that could speak in a way to your community building, is that here is a way for people to tell stories, to share ideas, to discuss, perhaps debate. That's not embedded into what they're trying to do. It doesn't need to be. That's not indicative of the art form, but I think it offers that opportunity, because you're working here in part, but you're not on a stage or in a rehearsal hall trying to create your art when you're in this art form.
So just let me ask you a question. So that the public benefit really is amongst the quilters themselves? That's the community, that's the beneficiaries of the
I
art?
would argue that the attendees of people who see the artwork, the quilts on display, are
Ultimately.
also benefiting as well. I think it's multifold.
Okay. Thank you.
And I want to say also here to Deontay's question that I found the support materials really helpful to kind of bring that to life for me. Watching the pitch, the video, and looking at some of the photos of folks coming together and working on quilts as a group, I thought those were very impactful.
Tamara, did you have something final to say? I know we're going a little over on public benefit and maybe we're blending into the next one. That's just fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say too, it's I think it's the audience, but it's also not just the quilters, but the potential quilters, people like kids who might be learning, from their grandmother, and their grandmother, to Christopher's point, has a story. So to me, quilting is art. I've seen quilts in galleries.
Thank you. Yeah, let's move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I'll just say I scored them on a high end of fair for this, likely bordering strong. And I'll just say, I think the mere fact that we're in such dialogue about this application shows the vibrancy of it. And it really does present a new form of art that some folks might not even be as familiar with. So I think in terms of also building skill set of community is really important through this project.
I rated them strong for reasons I have already shared.
I'm listening to my panelists and revise.
Thank you, Beth. Go ahead, Tamara.
So I rated them fair. I think this is a worthy project, but I wanted them to elaborate more here, about the things that actually we were just discussing, just about like the importance and the artistic, if you will, like the artistic nature of quilting. I wanted them to really kind of write more about that.
I agree with that. I did rank them as high here, or strong. But I did think in reading some of the answers that I thought they could do a little bit more to specifically answer the prompt. So there was a little bit of repetitive information. So in the future, just being a little bit more clear to answer exactly that prompt would be helpful.
Great. We can move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
All right, I'll jump in. I rated this area on the very high end of weak. Project expenses are listed as 82% higher than the fiscal 24 organization's budget. There's not much detail about how these additional funds will be secured. Data Arts report shows that 83% of contributed revenue was in kind, leaving only 95 plus $100 as contributed cash. Yet they had salaries of 36,500 in fiscal year 22, and there were no explanations for the anomalies I have just listed.
Any new or differing thoughts here?
I another area where I was struggling in. I rated them fair here, and I think particularly in terms of their evaluation for measuring success of the program, I think they had some hard benchmarks in terms of like number of participants, workshop attendance, retention. But then they started talking about the quality and quantity of the quilts, and I don't necessarily know if that is a way in which you can determine the efficacy or the impact of the program too. So I think there's a little misalignment in some of their evaluation metrics and methodologies too. So I think having a little bit more clearer understanding of that would set them up for greater success.
And just following up also what Chris said, I rated them fair. And I do think that there was a question about how they're using in-kind in terms of their budget, which I thought was a little confusing.
I rated them fair for that same reason. I was unclear about the in-kind line item. But I did rate them fair because they seem, like I was saying before, they seem to have a really strong, like at the staff seem to have a really strong connection to the community.
Great. That concludes our time for Oh So Powerful. We have Open Doors Academy coming up next. I'll pause here and get that started in just a moment. I'm thinking after Open Doors Academy, we will take a 5-minute break, if that sounds okay for our panelists. Okay, cool. So our next application here from Open Doors Academy for their project titled Open Doors Academy Arts and Culture Summer Camp Program. ODA proposes to implement a wide range of arts and culture camps for youth in summer 2025. Camp participants will learn new art forms and experience the visual, literary, performing, and cultural arts. Every camp incorporates social, emotional learning activities, and camps are infused with reading and math-related activities as well. Would someone like to get us started around public benefit, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I can start. I rated them strong. I said they have a very, very clear understanding of the community, but also the community struggles and how to respond to those struggles. I thought that was a really strong point of this application.
I'm just gonna hop in to say I rated them strong across the board, so I'll be silent for the rest of this evaluation. But I thought this application just really provided some really clear and strong detail that gave me a really good understanding of the work that they were doing and the goals that they were setting out to accomplish.
I rated them strong. I wish they had talked more about how they recruit the students for the camps. But I did rate them strong. I think it's a good program.
Strong, very strong in this category for me. I don't need to add anything.
Same here.
All right, we can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project. Beth, you're off mute. Do you want to get us started?
Sure, I will. I keep forgetting that. I did rate, kind of like with Deontay, I rated them strong across the board. And the emphasis on making the artists of color to the experience of the students was quite strong and engaging and great.
Agree. I also had them as strong, and I thought that they had strong partnerships in place to provide engaging programming. They had quantitative feedback processes, so they could gather input from a variety of stakeholders involved. They even had third-party evaluations on various aspects of their work. So I thought that was a great demonstration of vibrancy.
I'm also on the very strong in this category. And the one thing I would add is how they pointed out that they, beyond their arts programming, they include social emotional learning, and they weave math and reading throughout their camps over the course of the summer.
All right. We can move on. Oh, go ahead. No, please.
I just said ditto.
Okay.
I really enjoy, all the arts, poetry, songwriting, and along with the reading and math, I thought was great.
All right, we can move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I'll jump in here just because I know a couple of the panelists already said that they rated it as strong, and I wanted to I had a slightly different opinion. I have them as fair here, but very high fair. And I think that's because I had a couple of questions around the categories in the budget that are called other direct and indirect expenses. I just wanted to know more about what those are about. And then in the data arts, I was curious why the percentage of agency revenue allocated to the arts program was reduced so dramatically, and I didn't find an explanation to that in the narrative.
I'll jump in with that. I rated them strong here, and I did enjoy the additional explanations and narratives that they had in data arts, while also noticing the things that Roshi noticed.
And
As
I was just gonna say, in looking back, I rated them high end of fair for the comments that Roshi noted in the budget.
So I rated them strong here. I love that they really underscored the importance of representation, seeing yourself in the people providing the services. They had the quote about when a young Black man sees even one Black teacher, the impact is significant. And I really appreciated them highlighting that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I scored them strong in this area, but because of the way in which they describe their team and their capacity to do this work was simply remarkable to me. I thought they presented a really unique way to describe the work they do and how they do it.
Great. Thank you, everyone. That'll conclude our time for Open Doors Academy. I think what we're going to do now is we'll take a quick 5-minute break. So panelists, feel free to turn off your cameras and step away as you need to. We will get a little timer going on the screen so that, oh, there it is. Perfect. Looks great. So that we can keep an eye on that and make sure we're back in time. So we will return in just a few minutes. Thanks, everyone. that 5 minutes can fly by. We'll let Deontay rejoin us before we get started. All right. So our next application here is from Open Tone Music for their project titled Open Tone Music Amistad Caribbean Arts Program. The Amistad Caribbean Arts Program is an open tone music arts education initiative centered on the history, music, art, and culture of the African diaspora. The Amistad Caribbean Arts Program includes year-round activities, workshops, and a culminating summer camp. So would someone like to get us started on how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I will say that I scored them fair in this area. I really appreciated their focus on the cultural diversity as a means of how they will connect with the community, but I think I would have loved to see a little bit more evidence on their engagement strategy and how they plan to promote this program and opportunity to the community as well.
I scored them on the low end of strong, kind of for similar reasons. I wish they were clearer about the after-school program, that the camp seems clear, but it was the after-school program that I didn't really, I needed more clarification for that.
Just like Beth, I had them as a lower strong for the same exact reason. I had questions about what schools will they be working with, how many schools are there, how many teachers, how many students, how has community feedback helped shape the program in the past, or how do they foresee that it will in the future? Some questions around that.
I rated them strong. I thought they did a strong job of defining their community, but I noticed it. I only thought it was a decent job of how they connect to their community. I also wanted to know more about the demographics of leadership, staff, and the teaching artists.
I rated them on the low end of strong as well. I thought this was I thought this was a really compelling project, and I do seem to, want to create like something meaningful for the population that they're serving. But I did want to know like how they were gonna, more detail about how they were gonna go about it.
Any new or differing ideas here around public benefit? We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I ranked them as strong here but again, I thought that they could be scored higher if they were more clear around how the artists are recruited and paid, and how they kind of gather feedback from the community.
I concur with that. I rated them on the low end of strong for the same reasons.
I rated them strong and really appreciated the classroom curriculum. That was one of the attachments. I actually poured through that to see how they help teachers move through that curriculum leading up to the project at the end.
I rated them strong for the same reason.
Great.
I was just going to note that I scored them on the high end of fair, borderline strong, I think, for very similar reasons.
We can move on to organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I rated them fair here. One note that I made was that I like the fact that they did speak to their challenges in fundraising since the start of the pandemic. Always interested in more detail about the how and the moving forward and what's next to always ensure success of a project.
Yeah, and I in a similar vein, I rated them on the high end of fair for the information about the impact of the pandemic on their budget, going through strategic planning is, I think, something that many arts organizations are going through.
I had them on the low end of fare for those same reasons. I was just concerned about their ability to carry out the program with those financial questions in mind. The loss of the 40K corporate grant, I had questions about that. You know, why did just a few questions here or there in the data arts that would have helped me score them higher.
Very similar. I scored them fair. The only new thing that I'll note, though, is that they did present a really clear timeline for the project, as well as really clear goals and how they plan to measure those as well.
Same, I rated them fair. I thought they had some really measurable goals, and the team seems, you know, if they're like the team seems to be a good, passionate team. But I was wondering about some of the things people have mentioned about the budget.
Right. That concludes our review for open tone music. We will next move on to the land. I think in the online assessment it might be called the land CLE in just a moment. Great. So our next application for the land is for their project titled The Land's Community Journalism Program. The Land trains Clevelanders and Greater Clevelanders to report on their own neighborhoods, capturing the true essence of life in their communities. Each participant in their classes gains a greater appreciation for reporting while getting hands-on and one-on-one training in research, writing, and editing articles. Would someone like to get us started around how this application connects to public benefit, an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I'm happy to. I had them as strong here, and that the premise of the program itself is to pull from and train the community to better serve the community. I did wonder if more could be done to spread the word about the community journalism program and to attract diverse students.
I'll just say that I don't know if this is part of what we can offer, but I love this application. I thought this program was really interesting and amazing, and building a new skill set for the community is an absolute bonus. I did score them strong in the area of public benefit. However, I did have a question of when they're describing their community, how do they determine, and this is specific language that they use, communities that lack significant media presence or are considered news deserts? I'm sure there is some sort of criteria for that, but that is a very interesting way to determine who they work with and who they want to focus on. So I would have liked a little bit more clarity in terms of that criteria to help them make that determination. And I also just thought it was a great benefit. I think that they are compensating the participants in the program and giving them opportunity to have work published in their publication is really profound. So I loved this aspect of the application.
I actually scored them fair. I thought it was a really interesting program. I just wish there was more details on what the actual course was, like what it was that they were actually teaching the participants.
I also rated them fair here. And in addition to what's been said, I want to learn more about more details, more demographics about their most recent participants. I didn't get a clear sense of the community of people who are actually in the classes.
So I rated them strong, and what I had written that I like that this project gives Clevelanders a voice, but I want to clarify and say I like that it helps them amplify their voices. I just think that that's really important to have, you know, representation in all the various neighborhoods of Cleveland and to be able to talk about it.
Thank you. We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I thought that they were strong in this category. I especially really enjoyed seeing that they had actually, they mentioned an example of receiving feedback in the past about increasing the one-on-one mentorship and then working to implement that. So I just love seeing an actual example of how feedback is used. I did want to know more about the mentors and how they're selected and paid. I think maybe at some points it was plural, at some point they mentioned one mentor, so I wasn't quite sure how many there are and who they are actually.
Chris,
Go ahead, Beth.
Oh, okay. I actually also rated them fair on this. I was just curious. It seemed like they had worked with 60 applicants. They're looking for 60 new applicants for it, but they've only trained 100 applicants in the past 3 years. So I just wanted a bit more substantial and proactive information about a recruitment program for the future.
I rated them fair here. I wanted to know more about what's the continued engagement with their graduates. They get their graduation article published. How, in the recent history, how many more articles have been published by recent graduates? What are the range of topics that have been explored by those graduates?
Chris, I'll just note, I believe, and I might need a second to point to it exactly, but I believe they did speak about the continued relationship between the graduates and the organization, because I believe that they talked about how folks go on to offer more articles, if you would, in their publication.
Like, I think it says graduates are invited to continue writing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's enough of a connection for a continued relationship.
So I'll jump in. I rated them strong because for artistic and cultural vibrancy, because one of the criteria is paying artists for their time and expertise. And I love that they pay the graduates, and that really shows that I just appreciate they value the people's time.
Thank you. Thanks, Tamara. Yeah, that's one of the, illustrative examples we give for the criteria. It's not a requirement, but that is a good example of one of many ways that they can show that, certainly. Let's move on to organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I had them as fair in this category. I had some questions as I was reading it, reading the application. 3 folks were mentioned with bios, but they weren't mentioned. It wasn't mentioned how they're involved with the organization or what each one does. So that would have been helpful. I was curious about retention levels, since this is a free educational opportunity for adults. I would have liked to see that as one of the metrics to track, because I assumed there would be some attrition as the program goes on each cycle. And it was very cool to see that they've started to help expand it to other markets or help other cities take on similar programs. The income was only $85,000. So if they're anticipating other funding sources, they should have stated that there, maybe like as a line that said anticipated additional funding or something like that. And I was curious what the $50,000 income from subscriptions was all about, because I didn't see any mention of that in other parts of the application.
And following up on Rashi's, I had a question about that. I was unclear about, do they charge for subscriptions or do they not charge as being part of the budget? So I kind of scored them fair on this end.
And I think I went to their website, and I think you can purchase a subscription, which helps support the organization. I can't remember if there's a way to read everything for free or not, and if it's sort of a pay as you will or pay as you choose. But I did go check out the website itself. I will say in organizational capacity, I rated them fair. I wanted more detailed explanation about increases in revenues and expenses. beyond just the 1099 contractors, which they reference in the data arts report. And to Deontay and Beth's comments earlier about my comment about continued engagement in question 7, Beth, yeah, they do say many publishing multiple stories with the land and other local publications. And that's a thing for me. Why use the word many when you could say X percentage of participants in the last X number of years, or this number? We're asked to take the word many and interpret that the way they want us to interpret that. It's just a place of where a specificity can certainly help.
This may also be an area where character count is coming into play. I could easily see that happening too. But yes, I appreciate your careful attention here. We'll move on now to our next review, which will be the movement project in just a moment. So the Movement Project, our next application for their project titled Cleveland Dance Fest 2025. Cleveland Dance Fest 2025 marks the Movement Project's 10th annual 3-day festival featuring new works by dance artists in Northeast Ohio, the regional Midwest, and beyond. They do this through concerts for professional artists, pre-professional, and a virtual dance film platform, as well as master classes for youth and professional dancers. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to public benefit, an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I scored them fair here. I had a little trouble reading through some of the information that was shared, and I think a general comment that I would note probably throughout this application is that there needed to be some more specificity with some of the answers that were given that made it a little bit harder to determine how much of a public benefit or artistic and cultural vibrancy was actually evident, because there just wasn't enough information to make that determination.
I would echo that, Deontay. I had them on the low end of strong. I thought they did a good job of defining the dance community, but I needed more detail about the audience community beyond those dance enthusiasts who are going to find this program and support this program. What are those other demographics?
I actually said the same exact thing that Chris said. I needed more development on the audience, how they're engaged, how they're informed. And I also scored them on the low end of strong.
I scored them strong as well. I definitely did see the benefit with the artist, and I saw the benefit to the audience. I'm sorry, I saw the benefit with the artist, but I saw the benefit with the audience as well, because they're talking about challenging outdated beliefs, and I could just kind of, to me, it kind of showed how art can change people's minds.
Similarly, I don't want to belabor things that were already said, but one note that I did want to mention is they said, I enjoyed reading this, that audiences are active participants in the art making process and in the exchange of ideas and energy. I appreciated that note.
Any new or differing ideas here for public benefit? We can move on to to artistic and cultural vibrancy, an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I'll hop in here to say that I scored them fair. I'll note that they mentioned that maybe their origins stemmed from this 2015 community meetings and how they were hearing directly from artists about their needs, concerns, and hopes for the future of dance in this region. But I'm a little lost still on how are they using either that information today, or how are they collecting and utilizing new community feedback today? You know, they're talking about feedback that was given almost a decade ago, and we know that the arts and cultural community has changed drastically since then. So where are their finding new opportunities to get and collect that feedback. And then I'll also just note that they mentioned something about specifically speaking to their hopes of increasing artistic support, I believe, for artists, but there was no evidence of specific actions that they were going to be taking in this project and program to move them forward in those aspirations.
I actually rated them strong in artistic and cultural vibrancy. And one thing I was particularly impressed by was in the narrative when they listed the many different styles of dance and formats of presenting dance that have been part of previous year's projects.
So I rated them fair. To echo what Deontay said, I like that they hosted a meeting to hear about the artist's needs, but I wanted to know more about what was resulted from that meeting and how that, helped them kind of change their programming.
We can move on to organizational capacity, an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I had them as high fair in this category. I thought that they very clearly articulated the project timeline and implementation process, but I noted that the revenue was larger than the expenses. So I was curious what that balance will be used on. And I was just overall a bit confused by the budget section, what the CAC funds will be used for, things like that.
I rated them as fair. Again, just a challenge with trying to read through some of the information that was presented, because when asked to describe their organization and their team, they have a section specifically about ticket sales, and it missed the opportunity, I think, to talk about the real capacity of the folks powering this work, to give us a better insight of the organization. I also noted that they were not clear on how they would be measuring success. And I asked the question, how can they actually assess the benchmarks that they presented?
I had them on the low end of strong here. I appreciated how they were able to turn themselves around financially following the beginning of the pandemic. And they did a pretty good job of how they reported that through their data arts numbers.
Thank you. A small note I'll make here is that, regarding revenue and expenses zeroing out, that's not a requirement or a component specifically of organizational capacity. It's okay for organizations to earn revenue off of CAC funded programming. But of course, confusion around budgets is indicative of organizational capacity. Just want to make sure that that is clear here. That'll conclude our review for the movement project. We will turn next to Tremont West Development Corporation in just a moment. So our next application here for Tremont West Development Corporation is for their project, the Tremont Arts and Cultural Festival, which is in its 26th year. It's a multicultural event in Lincoln Park, Cleveland, Ohio. It features fine art, children's activities, diverse food vendors, and diverse local musicians and performers. Would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I'll jump in. I felt they had strong evidence of public benefit in this narrative. The community of artists, performers, attendees is well defined. They were even able to share some demographics about attendees, and we all know how difficult that can be to gather. I was interested in learning a little bit more about the participating artists and the performing groups and some demographics around those.
I'll go. I gave them on the strong end of voting. It would have been beneficial to acknowledge a little bit more about the outreach to potential communities. It's not always complete to just say reaching out to to new communities, but how they're going to do that. So the left out communities I thought could have been expanded a little bit more, but I gave them on the high end of strong.
I also had them as strong. This is a very minor thing, but I noticed they said that the program participants are 12 to 75 years old. I was wondering if younger than 12-year-olds or older than 75-year-olds also participated, and they didn't have that in the data. It just struck out to me, especially since they had mentioned that they have children's activities. So this is not something I took any points off of for, but it struck out to me.
Any new or differing thoughts here around public benefit? We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is, an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I know I marked them as fair in this category and only noted that there wasn't much evidence on how they would be surveying their audience for feedback to determine programming, or even helping to determine if they're meeting their goals. So that audience engagement piece was lacking in this area.
I also had them as fair, and I'm kind of curious to hear from other panelists about this. In reading it, I got the impression that they are providing space to artists to showcase their work and sell it, but that it sounded to me that the artists have to pay to participate in this. So is providing space enough of a support for artists? And because they actually say that we're supporting artists with this program. So I just had questions around that and how other panelists read that information.
I'll jump in. I had them on the low end of strong for this because of their wide range of diverse performances that they present and the opportunities for local artists to showcase and sell their work. And it is, if you are an artist on the sort of arts fair circuit, you do purchase a booth space at every single one you go to. Again, the art museum I worked for here in Kalamazoo does a weekend long arts fair at the beginning of the summer. It's highly attended, highly anticipated in the community. And I can make a case for how an organization is supporting these artists by offering them that space. There are often costs to the organization to have access to the space. And so the buy-in on the artists is usually competitively priced, and it is part of their cost of doing business. And it's generally accepted within their world that they buy a booth space, they set up their tent, they set up their stuff, and that's how they have direct access to the public, hopefully in addition to any gallery opportunities they may have.
I rated them on the low end of strong. And one of the comments that I kind of made was looking at their flyer, which was several pages of all the different booths that were available. If part of their programming is interested in kind of opening up to diverse and especially audiences with disabilities, I didn't find anything on the flyer that said it was accessible, unless I missed that. But so there has to be follow-up with what they're saying, that the communities that they want to engage with information.
Thank you. We will move on to their organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I had them as fair in this category. Again, I found some discrepancies in the budget. The project expenses with the income didn't match up. Just overall, I was confused about the financials. And I didn't get a full picture of the project timeline or plan exactly for implementation. So I just have some outstanding questions.
So I rated them as fair too, particularly because in the question that says describe your team, they talked about kind of the history, but they described the team in another question. And so I just kind of, to Roshi's point or previous point about answering the prompt, I kind of wanted that to be, to know, who the team was in the question about describe your team.
Sorry, I forgot to mention one other detail. In the budget, I noticed that just to the earlier conversation we had, it seems like arts and culture professionals have to pay to participate, but they were also listed under expenses for $10,000. So I wasn't sure, like, who are those artists? Are those the jurors? Some are getting paid and some are having to pay to participate. So again, just some more information in the narrative would have been helpful.
Any new or differing thoughts here? Okay. And that then concludes our review for Tremont West. We will turn next to University Circle Incorporated in just a moment. So our next application here is University Circle Incorporated for their project titled Wait Oval Wednesdays. Wait Oval Wednesday is a multi-week concert series that celebrates community and features performers showcasing a wide range of musical genres. In addition to live music, attendees enjoy interactive intermissions, free children's activities, local food trucks and vendors, and themed nights that celebrate community diversity with special programs, resources, and activities. Does someone want to get us started around how this application relates to public benefit, which is an organization's ability to create an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I can start. I rated this strong. It sounds like a really great use of the space and a fun summer thing to do. I think it's accessible and appealing to a wide range of community members. I like that there's space for art projects for the kids, and I like that there's also support services that they mentioned, like the job tent.
I rated them strong for everything Tamara said. I also wrote down, noticed that they have interest themed evenings throughout the summer.
I rated them strong for the same reasons.
Me too, but I noted that I really appreciated how they described the community that they are looking to connect with, and more importantly, how they plan to engage with that community as well. So I thought that was really noteworthy.
Great. We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I had them as strong here. I really like that they compensate artists for participation. I would have I'd love to learn a little bit more about how the bands are sourced and whether feedback from the community has made its way into the implementation of the program or the design of the program in the past. I know with a program like this, it's hard to gather formal feedback since people come in and leave. So just kind of was wondering more about that process.
I just concur. I mean, I rated them high. I think doing theme nights and focusing on those individual communities was very clear.
I have them strong here, illustrated by the variety of different my pop-up just got in front of my narrative. Illustrated by the variety of performing groups that they present throughout the series.
I rated them strong for the same reason, just the different genres of music, but also, as a summer program, things that happen during summer, like Juneteenth and Pride, and Disability Pride. I really like that they highlighted that.
We can move on to organizational capacity on organizations' ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
Excuse me, I rated them fair on this in this category. I had a question of if the staff, because there just wasn't a lot of some detail about the staff in terms of demographics, how reflective they are of the community, or even if they are of the community, they very might be. Just would have loved to known that. And I think this question was already raised. How are they curating the programming, and who's responsible for those selections as well?
I agree with that. I also had them as fair. I wish I could, in addition to what Deontay mentioned, understand a bit more clearly the budget, because I noticed that there was a $4,000 deficit between the budget table compared to the proposed budget amount. And then in the data arts, I noticed a large state government grant that made a big difference from the 2022 data to the 2023 data. So I would have just liked to know more about that, what that was and why that was.
I had them strong here for the years of experience that the lead staff have. I didn't write it down, but I think this was the organization that said that because they're part of a larger organization that does fundraising, they do not put any organizational overhead or development expenses towards this specific project grant. I could be wrong on that since I didn't write it down for this. But they have a lot of fundraising expertise above them that I think they can turn to when they need to ensure the viability of the project.
Great. That concludes our time for University Circle. We will move next to Brite Cleveland in just a moment. So our next application is from Brite Cleveland for their project titled Bright Winter 2025. In the winter of 2025, Cleveland will celebrate its 16th Bright Winter Festival with over 20 musical acts on indoor and outdoor stages and art experiences that explore the theme Sweet 16. Would someone like to get us started on how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
All right, just to keep us moving. I rated them strong in public benefit. I thought they had a well-defined community and a well-defined plan to communicate with both the community of performing artists and the community of their audience, their attendees. Obviously, they're unique in programming an indoor-outdoor project for the winter in this part of the country.
I have a difference of opinion from Chris. I actually scored them weak in this area. I think there was some uncertainty about the location of the program. And I think that caused some concern for me. Then a number of questions of, are the artists that they're working with part of this community? It didn't seem like they provided enough evidence of who their community is, but then they noted that they were looking to actively seek BIPOC artists. And so then I had the question of why are they not part of the core community right now, or are they? There was a lot of uncertainty there. And then also the question of how are they building potential partnerships in this new community since they're moving to a new site? Because I think it's coming back to me, they talked about going from one site and going back to another site. And so there seemed to be almost like they're planting themselves in a community maybe that they're not as familiar with. I don't know if anyone else got that read from this application.
I kind of follow along with Chris. I actually gave them strong rating, and I guess I assumed that the new relationship and the new community that they were going into was kind of, the impetus was working with new BIPOC artists to kind of get a hold into a new community. That was my read of it.
I'll just say that this is a valid and relevant conversation topic when we're talking about public benefit, again, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community. Just wanted to highlight that there. Thank you. Are there any differing or new ideas here around public benefit in particular? We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I had them as strong here. I saw a commitment to spreading the word widely about the opportunity so that they could attract diverse local talent. And I appreciated the commitment to paying artists well.
I scored them fair in this area. Again, for me, it read a little vague. Definitely needed some more specificity. There was an overuse of terms like diverse community or diverse artists, but I believe that when we're speaking about diversity, we need to be specific as well. And so having some demographics or some specificity in terms of what this diversity looks like for them, I think would have been a little bit more supportive to score them higher on the grading scale, if you would.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed that as well. And I wanted more information about, you know, the diverse community members and the diverse music, things like that.
Acknowledging what everyone has said, I had them strong in this category.
I did as well.
It sounds like we can move on to organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project. Beth, you're off mute. Do you want to get us started?
I had them strong. Sorry, I keep forgetting to.
That's okay.
Yeah, I felt that they had they were clearly working to adapt a strategic plan to deal with the changing times that we were going through. So I had them strong.
I also had them as strong, assuming that the new location and partnership with whatever new organization on the ground goes well and continues to be accessible and you know, allow them to reach a broader audience. The only note I had in the budget was under the other category. I was wondering what that is covering, especially since it was a significant portion of the budget, but nothing that would take any points off.
I had them on the high end of fair in this category, and here's where Deontay's concerns about the venue played in for me. At least when they submitted this proposal, they had not confirmed the venue. They could have very easily finished that, and they've locked it in by now, knowing how early these things have to be submitted in these processes. But I liked the transparency around their various revenue streams, and I think that showed that the organization is thinking about how they can increase their revenues.
So I rated them strong. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I rated them strong because they seem to have a good mixture of nonprofit management experience and music experience, which I think both are important.
I rated them fair in this category. I didn't see any evidence of measurable goals, truthfully, here. And I also, in terms of specificity, I made a note of this and want to point to this line in question 12, where they respond, "We will know that we are making progress toward our goal if we continue to reach beyond our current comfort zone in regards to artistic partnerships and business relationships." I personally am not really sure what that means or how that will be measurable for them if they're talking about a comfort zone beyond just actual benchmarks that they can hold up to say, did we accomplish these things?
Thank you. That concludes our time for Brite Cleveland. We will turn next to Kaboom Collective in just a moment. So our next application from Kaboom Collective is for their project titled Educating Young Artists About Music Industry Careers Through the Production of a Holiday Album. This project will immerse young musicians in all facets of the production of a new holiday album. Students will work with industry professionals from conception and composition through recording, mixing, promotion, and performance. Upon publication, students will perform and tour the album at multiple venues for audiences in December 2025. So would someone like to get us started around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project?
I can kick things off. I had them as fair in this category. I thought that while the idea for the program sounds like an interesting one for students to engage in, I was left wanting for more information about how they're reaching these students. They mentioned that they would be promoting the program on clevelandartsevents.com. Great. But what other partnerships and tools are at their disposal to help them broadly attract a diverse range of students to participate? They mentioned that the target age is 15 plus. So again, how are they specifically targeting this age group? Are adults also welcome? Where will the performances be? I was kind of left with confusion around some of the details about the program.
So I'll follow up on what Roshi said. I actually rated them the high end of weak. I wasn't really sure how many students are participating, how they're recruited, if it's audition or interview based. They talk about 2,500 as being this expected participant. Is that in an audience? Is that people that are streaming the album that ultimately comes out? So I wasn't really quite sure. And I wasn't sure if, so who are the participants? Is it the students or the audience? So I had a lot of questions.
And I'm going to echo what Beth said. I had them fair here, and I specifically wrote down how are 2,500 people going to be directly involved in this project, and how many students participate in each cohort group of the ways they break down sort of the different committees that are building up to the creation of this album. A lot of unanswered questions.
For those reasons too, I marked them as weak in this category. And the only additional thing that I'll note is that they mentioned going outside of traditional symphony venues for the touring aspect of this, but they don't give any indication of where they're going. So how is this actually going to be accessible and equitable to the community that you're looking to engage with?
So I rated them fair, just for something that Roshi said, just about I wasn't sure where the kids were coming from. Is it a school? I wasn't sure if they were already part of the Kaboom Collective in some kind of way. So I would have liked more information about that.
We can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I scored them on the low end of fair here. I think they did have evidence of surveying their students and tracking data, both in terms of, I believe, sales for this album, as well as tickets to their performances, but did note that there needed to be more evidence on, I think Roshi said this earlier, their recruitment practices to determine their intention, especially of hiring artists from these diverse backgrounds. I think there was some misunderstanding or just a lack of information there. And I'm also curious about how they determined this holiday theme for this project. I really wanted to know, was this done, amongst their staff and team, or was this done and determined in conversation with the community that they're looking to connect with?
I also rated them fair on this. It wasn't clear if the students, they said that the instructors are paid for their time. It wasn't clear whether the students are paid for the performances that they're doing. It's an interesting project, but again, it's really not clear how the students are recruited for this.
I actually had them on the low end of strong in this specific category. And one of the things that sticks out to me is that all of the different ways young people can be involved in this project. It's not exclusively for performers, musicians. The opportunity to work in marketing, the opportunity to work in the recording technical side of this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Any new or differing thoughts here around artistic and cultural vibrancy? We can move on to organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I had them as strong in this category. It seemed like a great, strong team. And I also really appreciated the use of the support materials to bring the work to life, cool videos and images.
I also actually had them strong in this category, but I did have a question about how their attendance seemed to go from 500 to 30,000 between 2022 and 23, about what that was.
I rated them fair in this section, I believe, because they noted that there was some concern about the financial cost of the touring element of this project. And they didn't offer any, as I mentioned before, they didn't offer any insight in terms of where they would be touring to get an understanding of the venues that they would be bringing this programming to. And they mentioned that if they didn't receive full funding, that they may possibly remove the performance element of this program. So I just thought with all of those different hesitations and concerns, it presented some challenges for me to really determine the feasibility of doing this program as presented.
I also rated them fair, many of the things that Deontay shared. And I also think they missed a big opportunity to take advantage of that optional explanations section where they could talk more about the data arts report and financials in general.
So I rated them on the low end of strong. I think the team seems to know what they're doing, and I liked the ways they intend to measure success.
Thank you. That concludes our time for Kaboom Collective. Next, we will turn to West Shore Chorale in just a moment. Our next application from West Shore Chorale is for their project titled Joyful Voices, Jubilant Sounds. This project is a seasonal concert presented in December 2025, bringing together a diverse community audience, a professional orchestra, students from groups such as the Cleveland Institute of Music Youth Academy or local high schools, and West Shore Chorale members. Would someone like to get us started here around how this application relates to the public benefit criterion, which is an organization's ability to meaningfully connect with its community through its project? Roshi, do you want to get us started here?
Sure, happy to.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, they scored as high or strong in this category. I thought that they had a clear understanding of their target community, and it was a great note that they're including non-singing community members on the board and in the decision-making process to bring in diverse voices. I would have liked to learn a bit more about how they're specifically targeting students in the programming.
I rated them fair in this category. I wanted more details about the members of the chorale and the audiences. What are the demographics that could be available? Fairly easy to survey your participants, much harder with your audiences. And how does the organization communicate and connect with non-traditional art audiences for this specific art form?
Yeah, I too rated them fair. I thought that there wasn't a lot of information about the specifics of who their community is. It's either the chorale singers or the audience. And I wasn't sure which. I mean, probably maybe both, but how they recruit on both ends or how they market it to the audience, I wanted more information about that.
Tamara got kicked off briefly, but we will move on, and if and when she's able to pop back on, we'll let her comment again on public benefit, but we can move on to artistic and cultural vibrancy in the meantime, which is an organization's ability to create a relevant and engaging project.
I rated them fair here. I wanted to know to what degree and percentage are they programming works by any combination of women, BIPOC composers, and or living composers. This art form tends to be traditionally very white male Eurocentric composers. Same problem in the classical music and classical, vocal opera symphonies. And I didn't get a sense if there's any emphasis on trying to expand the repertoire that they're hoping to present.
Any new or differing thoughts here?
I had them as strong in this category, but I did think they could have scored higher. Well, I guess this is my own question around how much they're paying the artists, because I noticed only around $30,000 to $40,000 of expenses to around 50 independent contractors on the data arts data. So if that's the orchestra and artistic director, accompanist, just seemed a bit low. So kind of wondering what that means for the vibrancy of it.
I rated them high, but I actually made a comment that from my understanding is they paid the orchestra and their staff, but not the singers. So that was my understanding from what they discussed.
Thank you. Tamara, we lost you for a minute, but we worked our way through public benefit already. So if you would like to comment on that, you're welcome, or here on artistic and cultural vibrancy. Or if you need a moment to get in, that's fine too.
Okay, I'm ready for our artistic and cultural vibrancy. I moved to where the Wi-Fi is better. So I felt I rated them as fair. I felt like what they wrote could have been elaborated more about the variety of music from various cultures.
We can move on to organizational capacity, which is an organization's ability to successfully plan for and manage its project.
I rated them fair, on the high end of fair, acknowledging that they are completely volunteer run and managing a relatively small organizational budget.
I also rated them on the high end of fair on this category, but no new.
Yeah, and I rated on the low end of strong.
Me too. I found them to be strong. In particular, I thought it was a very clear description of the project timeline, which was helpful.
I rated them on the low end of strong.
Great. Any final notes around West Shore Chorale? Okay. That concludes our review of West Shore Chorale and concludes our reviews for today. That was our last one for this session. So first of all, thank you to our panelists for your thoughtful comments and your participation today. You heard me coming in with some word jumble, repeating myself around all of our funding criteria, and I appreciate your careful attention for this very long review meeting, so much appreciated. What I do want to do right now is just give each of our panelists here a moment, if you would like, to share any general feedback around CAC's process or the applications that you reviewed. So an opportunity for you to give any advice or feedback to the audience. And what I'll also do is remind our audience members that you have the opportunity to publicly comment as well. That is via the online public comment form, which you can find at cacgrants.org/panel. I think we can get it dropped in the chat as well. So we will use that same order that we started with, starting with Beth, if you would like to take a moment and just a minute to share any final comment for our applicants here.
Ohio does a lot of festivals, I will say that. It's an interesting challenge, not being from your area, to kind of see what's going on and to kind of get a better handle of the neighborhoods and what's happening. So I will say that the information, the support information is incredibly helpful. Like watching the YouTube videos and watching, getting the support information. So that's just something for the applicants to understand that people are reading this that really don't have a strong understanding of the communities. So the more additional support information we can get, the better, clearer picture we get on our end as to who you are.
I think I'm next on the list. Couple of things in several of the applications, organizations did a cut and paste of information across multiple questions. We've already read that. You don't need to repeat that verbatim. Give us new, different, more detailed information when you're given the opportunity. Go back and read the whole thing after you've done the because you work on them independent, sections independently. I think the data arts is a little bit confusing because there's a section towards the end where they ask about what you spent in digital. Some organizations reiterated their total expense lines, and I think by FY 2023, many organizations were no longer completely digital. It didn't affect my scoring on anyone. I think it's confusing with data arts right now. Take advantage of every opportunity to explain anomalies and swings in your budgets. Go over them with a fine-tooth comb. Ask the questions of yourself. Why is this number so much bigger or larger or different or new? So that we can get that understanding. We don't live in your office with you. And all that, the one conversation that Deontay and Beth and I had, stay away from words like many, a diverse, etc. Give us very clear-cut examples. Give us numbers, give us percentages, put things in context. 1,000 students to one person means something completely different to another person. So put everything in context to the number of characters you're allowed to do that. And, as Beth said, take advantage of all of your opportunities for attachments and give us high impact attachments so we really get a sense of your organization and the great work you are all doing.
I'll hop in just to echo the necessity for specificity in these applications. Again, as to Beth's point, we aren't always in the county or in the region. So as much information as you can give us, because we really do want to support and make sure that and advocate for the work if possible. And I just want to credit Cuyahoga Arts and Culture as an agency. You know, I think this is my maybe third time doing your panel, and I can actually track and see the progression of the applications that are coming in as well. So I'm not sure if you all are offering any particular capacity building or trainings as folks are preparing for these submissions and these applications, but I can definitely see that there is an increase just in the innovation in the programming, as well as the quality, if you would, in the information being presented through these applications. So much credit to you all as well.
I think I'm next, and I want to double click on a lot of the similar things that were said already. You know, this is an opportunity that not many communities have. The fact that Cuyahoga Arts and Culture exists and has such a broad definition of arts and culture and is so inclusive. So I would really take full advantage of this resource that is at your fingertips to our applicants here. And I know that the team is incredible, so please rely on them too as you are navigating the process. But in terms of the application content itself, I do want to say, echo some of the same sentiments that as folks who are not in the details, in the weeds of your organization, some details may stick out to us that to you might be very common, or you know why that's there. So maybe rely on a third party to review your application who might not have that insider knowledge before you submit it. That could be helpful.
Okay, as the last person, I'm gonna kind of echo what everybody said, but I'll say that I'm a grant writer, and so I've been on the other end of this, the applicant side, and some of the things people have highlighted are super important. It's kind of helped me understand a lot about, you know, my job. And one thing, I think someone else said this, is proofread, or actually get someone else to proofread. What Beth said about people may not know what you guys do, and I've certainly had to explain, you know, statistics about where I am in Memphis to, you know, just even though you think people kind of already know that, but a lot of the time they don't. And then what Chris was saying is just about the budget, you know, and again, this is something that I've done, is just explain if there's discrepancies, you know, with some of the line items, or maybe not discrepancies, things that need to be elaborated on. If there's space to explain that, you know, take advantage of that, because it's really helpful on this end to kind of know what people have previously mentioned, that funding might have dropped off because of COVID, or audiences might have dropped off because of COVID, or something like that, but just to kind of note that in the application.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. With that, panelists, please go ahead and just stay in the meeting. We're going to close out the live stream in just a moment. To any listeners, thank you so much for joining us. The panel will continue tomorrow at 1 p.m. with our next Zoom live panel in the same format here, and we will see you there. Thank you.